When playing through the prologue, have you ever wanted to explore more of Day 12 than the small path you're confined to? Maybe you're interested in leaving the town behind and seeing what lays beyond its borders. Or maybe you just want to piss off Grief by jumping around on his roof. Well, in this video, I'll show you some interesting things I've found out of bounds, and I'll also show how you can explore the outer world of Pathologic. Let's start with the intro on Day 12. Normally you'd walk through the town and eventually reach the cathedral, so let's take a look at what this looks like from a different perspective. To get out of bounds, head to this area in front of the theater. Jump onto this barrel, then onto this soldier, and then onto the tent. Although this tent is above the fence surrounding the theater, you can't actually jump over it because of an invisible barrier. To get past this, jump onto this partition and then onto the other tent. For whatever reason, the barrier doesn't extend this far, so you can jump over the fence and now you're out of bounds. The first thing you'll see while following the normal path is an army flamethrower burning some bodies. From the outside, there's not much to see besides maybe a better view. Next, you'll come across a group of townsfolk and a few soldiers. Here, someone throws a Molotov, a soldier shoots into the crowd, and they run off. Once you're outside of the intended route, this scene completely breaks. This dude will be in the corner hitting a T-pose, the barrier won't spawn in, nobody will play the animations they're supposed to, and nobody moves. And despite the Molotov not being thrown at the soldier, he'll still let out this scream. There's probably a point along the path that snaps everything into place, and since I never hit this point, this bit is just broken. Moving on, along the path you'll come across a group of soldiers holding two people at gunpoint, and after this you can see a plague cloud floating in the air. On the other side of these things, there isn't much to see. Once you reach the bridge, you can see a light far off in the distance. I found that it's actually a lantern that's partially stuck in the rocks here. Here I noticed that there are a few more plague clouds floating above the river that you can't see from the bridge. After the bridge, there's a few army flamethrowers burning people in the cape, but unfortunately I couldn't find a way to get over there. I couldn't find any other interesting things along the path besides for a plague cloud that's out of sight and placed in the ground. Now that we've looked at everything along the main path, let's take a look at the rest of the town. Starting back at the theater, the first thing I tried to do was enter a building, but unfortunately it's impossible to go inside any of them. Something interesting I noticed while trying buildings is that you can open the trash cans and take the items inside. This made me think to check out the cache behind the theater. This cache and the other one nearby will always be open and empty, which I like to think is because it is Day 12 and the Haruspex has already been through here and looted it. Next, I wanted to head to Town Hall. At the end of the district, things started to look a bit weird. Since I'm not supposed to be here, the game doesn't try to load in any of the town, which results in everything looking like this. As I entered the backbone, I fell through the stairs onto the ground underneath. You can actually run through walls, buildings, and anything else here because none of it has any collision. Here there's usually a gate you can walk through, but now it's just a wall of terrible graphics. Since once again there is no collision, I can just walk straight through to Town Hall. And here's a look at the building. It's looking very low quality. Inside nothing's here besides for a pit into the void where the jail cells used to be. Of course I jumped in, but was disappointed to find an invisible floor to stop me from falling through. In the pit, there's this weird black ceiling that's only visible from down here. And I didn't get stuck down here, I was able to get out by jumping up the walls. And since I'm in the area, here's what the floating stairs nearby looks like. Now let's head farther out into town by heading to Yulia's house. On the way there, I discovered that despite everything not having collision, you still can't get past the invisible walls surrounding the districts that prevent you from climbing rocks and jumping into the river. At the edge of the chine, things are looking even weirder. Beyond this point, there's no buildings or roads. Instead, there's a vague dirt path where roads used to be, and there's dirt clearings where the buildings were. I managed to make my way to where Yulia's house used to be, and the only thing that remains is a very large patch of dirt. There wasn't the usual bridge to the Tanners, so instead I just walked through the shallow water. Here there's a small hill and a dirt clearing where the Sabarovs' house was. And just like the chine, there was absolutely nothing around. Now let's check out the termitary. While walking there, I was getting a very eerie feeling from this version of the town. Right now it's kind of similar to the steppe, but because of the clearings and the dirt path, there's a vague sense of where things are supposed to be and are just missing. Every now and then, I would somehow get turned around and have to use the map to reorient myself, and the fact that it was constantly foggy, dark, and raining just added to the eeriness. It kind of felt like Silent Hill or the back rooms of Pathologic. Anyways, let's get to the termitary. Here there's huge dirt clearings where the blocks used to be, and on both sides of the path leading to the abattoir were long grassy mounds. At the end of the path I hit an invisible wall, and just beyond this wall was a massive hole where the abattoir was. I walked around to try to get a better look at this, but the entire thing is surrounded by walls that stopped me from getting too close. While exploring the area, I found a pit. I'm pretty sure this is the area the kin keep Vlad in after they capture him. This pit had collision at the bottom of it like the one at Town Hall, but unlike the Town Hall pit, it didn't have that black area that's only visible from the inside. Next, I wanted to see what Shiken looked like. On the way there, I stopped at the cemetery and found a rectangle of missing ground and floating jerboas. I'm sure this is here because this is the location of Grace's lodge, and like the other holes I found, it's an underground area. I was expecting an invisible floor like at Town Hall, but instead when I jumped in, I fell right through the map and quickly saw as the ground above disappeared into the sky. Later on, I'll take a deeper look into what happens when you fall through the map, but for now, I'm going to reload and keep exploring. Like I said, I wanted to see Shiken, so this time I'll take a different route there and look at a few other things along the way, such as the station. Like everywhere else where there used to be a building, there was just a huge dirt patch and nothing around. Heading towards the lair, I saw a light in the distance. Getting closer, I saw various lit torches scattered around the area. In this area, a train car and the Crowstone are also loaded in. These torches are only here during the nocturnal ending. This is where most of the bound are sent off into the steppe. I think this area was either used as a mock-up of what the actual area was supposed to look like, or more likely this is the exact same location and version that we see in the nocturnal ending. If it is the same thing, I think it's likely that the entire nocturnal ending takes place in the same map as the Day 12 intro. And maybe if other things around the map were loaded in, there might be some stuff around town from the ending. Before leaving the area, I checked out the lair. Here was the biggest pit I've seen so far. And finally, I made my way to Shiken. I was surprised to find that the bowl-shaped rocks on the entrance were fully loaded in and wasn't a weird smudge or something. There wasn't anything interesting here, besides for a small ditch where you get the blood from. That's it for everything interesting I found while exploring Day 12 out of bounds, so now let's move on to outside the town. If you've ever walked as far as you can out into the steppe, you'd know that eventually you'd hit an invisible wall. Using the polyhedron, we can get over this. To perform this next out of bounds trick, you're going to need a save that's at least on day 8 so that you have access to the polyhedron. Before doing anything, I recommend saving in Georgi's workshop and bringing bandages as well as water and food if you plan on being out there for a while. To get out of bounds here, walk up the polyhedron stairs until you're over the middle of this rock. Then you'll just jump off. You'll fall into the rock and take some damage. This is what the bandages are for. Once you're healed, you can fall the rest of the way down. And if you're careful, you can make it to the bottom without having to heal again. At the bottom, you'll fall through the Gorkin and onto the ground beneath. And now you're out of bounds. Now that I've escaped the town, I want to get as far away as possible from it, so I picked a direction and started walking. Just beyond the river, the steppe starts getting weirdly hilly, and from this point on, there's no grass, just dirt. Once I got past this point, I climbed another hill and saw that from here on, the ground is completely flat. Around here, I stopped to take some notes, and afterward, I noticed that there was a bunch of gray, shadowy marks all over my screen that weren't there before. Once I moved the camera, they all immediately disappeared, and once I stopped moving, they slowly started appearing again. I have no idea what these things are or why they're appearing, and they're kind of creepy, so I'm just gonna move on. Next, I came across a few patches of grass. In some spots around here, the dirt is a lighter color. Similar to the dirt patches I came across in the intro, this dirt seemed to mark out a path and maybe a spot where a building was. I think this area might either be a part of a dream or one of the locations you visit on the train ride into town, and right now it's just not loaded in. After a few more minutes of walking, I finally reached the edge of the map. Beyond this point is just a massive abyss. And I'm gonna jump in, but first I want to reach the corner of the map. I walked along the edge for about 5 minutes until the game crashed. This could have just been a normal random crash, but I didn't want to spend my time walking all the way out there again in case the game always crashes around that point. After I reloaded, I made my way to the edge of the map and jumped off. So this next part of the video is going to have some quick flashing images, so if you need to, skip to whatever time is on screen now. Once you're falling off the map, things start getting weird. The ground above disappears quickly, and shortly after, the polyhedron disappears into the heavens. There's not much you can do while falling through the void. Eventually, I pulled out my weapon, and Artemy was looking wobbly. Next, I pulled out my fists and saw this. This does not look comfortable. Artemy is probably in a great amount of pain right now. Pulling out my lamp, I was greeted by a very bright light emanating from it, and eventually the lamp did this. Then I noticed that Artemy was getting worse the more I fell. Here's what his fists and arms started to look like. This is what happens when I pull out my knife. And here's the gun again, and the lamp again. At this point, I can't even identify Artemy anymore. So I was falling for around 15 minutes, so here's the rest of what happened, sped up. Now that Artemy has successfully ascended to godhood, let's take a look at some other places around the map. This time, I'm going to run all the way through the river until I reach the abattoir. On the way, I found out that the rocks along the river don't have any collision. Instead, behind it is a wall of dirt that does have collision. You can actually jump up this dirt to get back into bounds if you wanted to. Eventually, I made it to Laura's house. This rock island behind her house has always really intrigued me for some reason. Just like the other rocks, this doesn't have any collision except for this one bit at the end. After running a bit more, I reached the abattoir. Here there's an entrance that feeds the Gorkin into the abattoir, which I can use to get inside. As I got close to it, a big black box appeared on my screen, and it seemed to really want to block this one area. This box appears from whatever angle you look at it from, and it's always blocking the same spot. It kind of felt like something was being censored, so I spent a few minutes angling my camera around in a few weird positions, but there's definitely nothing behind it. So I have no clue why this box is here. Anyways, here's what the abattoir looks like. It's kind of like a big bowl with the bottom cut out of it. I'm sure I could fall through the middle, but we've already seen what happens, so I'm staying away from that edge. I tried to get inside the termitary from here, but unfortunately the building's walls have collision all the way around. On my way out, I managed to get high enough to get above the water, and I saw that the abattoir is full of water. I couldn't get out the way I came in. There seems to be a one-way invisible wall blocking the entrance. I tried walking through the abattoir's walls to get out, but this accidentally put me back into bounds. I entered into an area that looked like I could climb the abattoir, so I did just that. At the top, I fell through the ground, back into the abattoir, and died on what I thought was a hole into the void. Since I died, now's a good time to explore in a different direction. Now I'm going to follow the river in the opposite direction for as far as I can. I didn't find anything interesting on the way, so here's what the end of the river looks like. Next, I wanted to see what the end of the train tracks looks like, but I couldn't find my way over there. Since I was way off the map, it was hard to tell my exact location, and the few times I did come across the tracks, I accidentally slipped back in bounds. I spent a lot of time trying to find it, but eventually I just had to give up. Before I end this section of the video, there's something really interesting I want to show you. At this location, there's a set of tracks. Since it's far out, normally this would just be flat areas and dirt, but along these tracks are grass and hills. Slightly off the side of the tracks, there's a dirt circle in this grass area, and eventually there is these bigger hills surrounding the tracks. These tracks are actually a part of the intro when you're riding the train into town. These bigger hills are the same area where the train gets derailed by the big bull, and I'm pretty sure that the dirt circle is where you do the fighting tutorial. The train does make a few more stops during the intro, but the track stops shortly after these areas, so if these areas are on the map somewhere, they're not here. Now that I've shown you all I found outside the town, let's move on to this final set of out-of-bounds areas. These areas and places around town I'll be talking about next technically are not out of bounds, but I think they still fit the category. First off, the warehouses. You can actually climb the warehouses and jump across the buildings. To get up here, go to this location in the warehouses. Stand on this pallet in between these crates and spam jump until you get on top of them. Jump to the top of the stack of crates, and from here you can jump up the side of this building. Once you're up here, you can reach almost every building nearby. To get on some of these buildings, you might have to make what looks like an impossible jump, but all the buildings around here have a slanted collision box that lets you jump up the side of them. If you're feeling risky, you can even make this jump onto Grief's warehouse. Moving on to inside of Grief's warehouse, you can climb all of the crates here too and get an interesting look of the place. Next, the cathedral. I'm going to call these parts sticking out of the cathedral its legs. You can jump up all of the cathedral's legs, but only halfway. Then you can stand inside of them. And you can use the ones closer to the wall to get on top of it. But that's about it. Now ladders. Almost every ladder in the game is climbable. They can be a bit slippery sometimes, but if you keep jumping, you should reach the top. Most of the time, you can't reach anything from these ladders, but if you head out to the station, you can climb this ladder behind this building and get onto the train. I recorded this when the army was here, so I'm not sure if this ladder is here otherwise. Once on the train, you can walk through the army's cannons, and the soldiers standing on the train are purely decorative. You can't interact with them at all. Now let's move on to the floating staircases around the map. Almost all of these staircases let you jump onto the rooftop of a nearby building, but once you're up here, there's no safe way down. Finally, you can climb some rocks and slanted walls around the town. You can get on top of the rocks behind the theater by using the nearby staircase, and you can climb any walls that are slanted like this. This can be used as a shortcut to jump over some other walls. So that's literally everything I found out of bounds. I'm sure I've probably missed a lot of things out there, and maybe there's even other out of bounds areas I don't even know about. So if you've spent any time exploring out of bounds and know some interesting things, be sure to let me know. Maybe I can make a part 2 to this video. I plan on making other Pathologic related content in the future, so if you're interested, maybe subscribe, and thanks for watching.